Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
So, Melanie, we got a piece of feedback this week,
Ooh.
but it wasn't an email. It was a real live letter. It was like a handwritten letter from a listener named Ezra, who is 13, who sent a letter in the mail.
I love that name. It's a great name.
It is a great name. Ezra Bridger is one of our favorite characters from Star Wars. And I think Ezra is also a Secrets of Star Wars fan. And he's written into them. And so he had a bunch of different things to say. I don't have the letter in front of me. That's the problem with letters, is they only exist in one place.
And you misplaced it?
No, I know exactly where it is. It's sitting on the shelf by the front door, which is on the other side of the door and in the other room where we're not recording.
Right.
So,
okay.
And I only just remembered that Ezra had sent the letter.
Oh.
Just now as we started recording.
Oops.
But it said some nice things, and he was he said he was sorry to hear about our mold problem, that he would hope we'd be back in our home soon, which we are. I'm sure he sent the letter a while ago, but for a letter to get to us here outside of Boston has to go to our P.O. box in Georgia and then be forwarded on from there to us, and so things that are mailed take a little longer. But thank you, Ezra. We really appreciate it. That was so fantastic to see. I was really excited. So let's talk about this past week. So I've had, just to start with a little personal stuff, I've had an odd week. Last Monday, I started feeling dizzy in the middle of the day, and it got worse and worse, and the dizziness was accompanied by nausea. I hadn't hit my head. I was feeling lightheaded, and had looked in the mirror, had not turned blonde. No, I'm just kidding.
Blonde jokes, really?
Blonde jokes. Yeah, I am lightheaded. I had to lay down. I felt really sick.
You slept several hours that afternoon.
Yeah, I just felt really bad. And then after this Tuesday morning, I woke up. I felt better. It was good during the day. And then I started getting sick again. And then it was like this all week, back and forth. Some mornings I wake up dizzy and get better during the day, and etc. And so I figured yesterday, as Jimmy and I were recording some episodes of Mysterious World, I was feeling it, and I kind of resolved, you know what, I'm gonna call the doctor on Monday. Call the
doctor? Yes.
Yeah. So although I talked to Jimmy about it, and it came up that maybe it was an earache. Like I had earaches as a kid, and as a kid, I never got dizzy. My ear hurt like the dickens. I remember that, just not being able to sleep and just being miserable. But I guess for adults, they can get earaches that can cause you to have dizziness and that sort of thing. So in any case,
when I blew out my eardrum, I was super dizzy. Like I had to sit down because I almost fell over.
Oh yeah. Well, the eardrum, yeah, that would totally be.
Yeah.
So, but today has been really good. So maybe the infection has cleared up or whatever it was. I know, still call the doctor, spend $100 so they can run bunches of the tests on you for no good reason. Yeah, I'll call tomorrow and see what they say. But I mean, I'll say, look, I feel better. Nothing. Should I still come in? At which point they'll say, yes, come in, because they don't want to be liable to say, don't come in. Because and then have something be wrong. So, yay!
Sometimes they tell you not to come in.
We'll see. If they tell me to go to urgent care, I'm not going to urgent care.
Yeah.
The last time I went to urgent care with a problem like this, I ended up overnight trying to get shoved into a MRI that I didn't fit into. My shoulders wouldn't fit. Man. Anyway, so that's my dizziness. Of course, the big news this week that everyone's talking about is the war in Ukraine, and that we've both been very preoccupied by it. I have a tendency to obsess about bad things happening in the world.
I'm nodding right here.
Yes, Melanie's nodding her head. Partly because I I identify with the people who are going through it, and I put myself in their shoes, and I imagine what it would be like to be dealing with that and how I would deal with it. And I mean, this has happened with the pullout from Afghanistan. This happens when I see tornado stories in the Midwest. I mean, this is just I don't know. It gets me. I don't think it's catastrophizing. I think I just empathizing.
Right.
I think I really strongly empathize. And so I've been following a lot of the stories, and not so much the political stuff but a lot of
stories.
The human stories, right? The story of there's this one video you might have seen of this dad with his daughter and putting her on a bus for the border, and him having to stay behind because men between the ages of 18 and 60 are required to stay in the country, be conscripted, and like he's like they're crying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like tearing my heart out to watch this. And stories of bravery, and at the hospital in Kiev where the NICU is been moved to the basement, and I'm thinking of the parents of these children who are there, have to stay with their children, and then the doctors and nurses who choose to stay with these patients that are under their care, and just all around the heroism. And so the kids, I notice our kids have been, paying attention. We talk about this stuff.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that one of the kids had scrawled on the map, like they'd circled the Ukraine, and then they'd drawn arrows for troops moving in from all
Russia.
sides from Russia.
Right.
I think that was Isabella.
Yeah, it was Bella.
She tends to be, she's 15, and she's pretty aware of current events, and she loves history, so she's very much tuned into things that feel historic.
Yes.
But all the kids have been kind of, to some extent or other, paying attention.
They're often in the room when we talk about it or bring it up or watch a video or that sort of thing. So, yeah.
I would like to say that our kids don't tend to get upset or antsy or anxious. Like they have anxiety, but us talking about current events doesn't trigger their anxiety. But if it did, I would be very much more leery about talking about stuff where they can hear. Honestly,
I think being open with them about some of the stuff, like talking about it with them,
but in a way that's not overly dramatic.
Right. Where it's very calm, very fact-based, very although this morning, like I made sure to share with, like, especially with Ben, because I think he's at that age, at 13, I think stories of courage, by not necessarily by like deeds in battle, but stories of other kinds of courage really inspire at that age. So I was telling him about this story I saw this video of a bunch of Ukrainian men in his village who stood on the road outside their village and refused to let the Russian column of tanks pass, just unarmed, standing there. And the Russians eventually turned around and these men walked the tanks out of their town.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and I said, like, what courage that takes. They had no idea whether the soldiers would shoot them, attack them, or what, but they were not going to let these tanks, and the tanks will go around. They'll go, down another road, and they'll still go where they're going. But there was that principle, like, we will not let you come through, this is our home, our land, our place, and you cannot come here. And I thought, like, wow, I bet Ben would like that. And so I told Ben, and I made a point to tell him. I made a point to know that I wanted to tell him about this story and share this story of courage and bravery with him. And I told Anthony and the others heard too. So I think that's a big thing, talking about the bravery of people who are serving others, who are staying in places to help, that sort of thing. And I think the other thing is I'm very careful not to demonize the Russians.
Right.
Especially the Russian people, the soldiers even. We talk about how these are mostly, 18, 19-year-old boys who are scared out of their mind. They don't really want to be there. They don't want to fight the Ukrainians. They're being sent here. They want to go home. They have mothers and sisters and brothers and friends and that sort of thing that they want to go home to. Yeah. So and even with like Putin, I mean, he's bad. but he's not a monster. Human beings aren't monsters. He is a person who has chosen evil and made evil decisions time after time after time, and that has consequences and has made him become an evil person. But he's not a monster. He's not a demon. And I think it's an important distinction. I think we forget that too often. So that's been obviously on my mind, and of course we've been praying for the Ukrainian people, and just
I've been following more of the I guess human interest stories,
the day-to-day life stories, the individuals. Yeah,
I found one woman on Facebook who lived in Kiev, and she eventually left, but like she posted a picture on her Facebook page of a cake that she'd bought. She had realized that she wasn't able to leave the city on the first day, and a friend came and called and asked her to come over and so they wouldn't be alone. And she stopped in a shop and bought a cake, and she said it was so surreal to sit eating a cake on the day that her country is at war. And then eventually they realized that the attacks were coming, and they moved down to the subway shelter. And so I followed her for a couple of days of her being and sleeping overnight in the subway, and the next morning getting up and finding a fruit vendor on the street who gave them instant coffee. And just she felt so ordinary, and she herself was just kind of stunned by, this is actually happening. This is my life. I can't believe that I'm sleeping in a subway station and I'm, eating cake.
Right. Yeah.
It felt like a scene in a novel. Like, it really did not feel like a news report so much. And I think that news reports can make things feel
clinical, cold, distant. Yeah.
And even when they're going for the emotion, I often feel like reporters are almost vulturous. Like, tell me how that made you feel. Why are you so sad about this sort of thing? And that really bothers me.
Don't you feel sad and want to cry at this moment? Yeah.
Whereas this, I don't know, social media has this ability to connect us with other people who are just people like us, just writing on Facebook for their friends and their family, and also aware. I mean, she was aware that other people were reading too. She'd spent a year studying at the London School of Economics, and so she knew that she had a bigger audience as well, and she was kind of using her Facebook platform to talk to the world as well.
Yeah,
it's an interesting age we live in, where ordinary people who are in the war zone can have their voices be heard on the other side of the world.
We can get a view into this situation, and it can make it, I don't know, it can make the war more present to us. It can make in a good way, in which case we say no war, stop the war. We need to, instead of being pumped up into, let's go fight. It's like, no, we need to get peace as soon as possible. That human connection is a key to that. So that's how we've been following this, and it's still scary, still
very
worried,
scary.
But we're praying, and the Pope has called for a day of prayer and fasting on Ash Wednesday. I mean, the perfect timing for Ash Wednesday this year with that, and so we're hope you will all join with us in these prayers with the whole church and the praying for it. So let's move on. Life goes on. Let's talk about stuff we've been cooking and eating. And so last week I did make a dish I'd been planning to make. I look at my Facebook memories, and I sometimes will see dishes of things I've made years ago and say, oh,
I haven't made that in a long time.
I should make that. And there was a picture of chicken saltimbocca that I had made several years ago.
I don't remember you making it before.
So this was, what was particularly interesting about this is it was a type of chicken saltimbocca that was a roll, like you rolled it up with the ham inside. I'll talk about the ingredients in a second. And then you held it together with toothpicks.
Oh, maybe that's why I don't remember it, because you did it differently this time.
Oh, yes. And the toothpicks I had several years ago were colored toothpicks.
Oh, I think I do remember.
Now
that.
you remember, right?
Yes.
So we had these so they ended up with like these red and green splotches on them.
It was kind of disconcerting.
It was a little weird. It was, it's food safe, but it was fine. But this time I decided to get a different recipe. I looked at a couple different ones, and so chicken saltimbocca is it means saltimbocca means jump in your mouth. I'm not sure that the food jumped in my mouth, but it was yummy. So it's chicken with usually I think the simplest version is chicken with prosciutto di Parma ham and sage. Those are the primary flavorings. Right. And so I took some chicken breasts and I cut them thin. So chicken breasts in the market today are these giant things. These chickens have had breast enlargement surgery out there. Like, I mean, it's like it's crazy. So I got 3 cutlets out of each chicken breast by cutting them like that, and then you flour them. You put a little sage, ground sage on it. Then you take a piece of the Parma ham and you put it on it, and then you cook it on the pan on both sides. Cook it through, move it to the oven, and then you make a sauce with white wine and lemon juice and butter, and it was pretty good. I served over some spaghetti.
It was tasty.
Yeah, I was pleased with it. As always, I think we've decided our stove runs hot. Like medium high in our stove is high.
Yeah.
So if a recipe says medium high, you set it to medium. So because I kept burning, and the smoke detectors are so sensitive. So, and I ended up having to cook them so long because I think I still had them a little too thick.
Probably.
It's so hard. I should have pounded them to make them thinner to get to, because it really needs to cook quick so that it doesn't overcook. And I think that might have happened a little bit. So I liked it. The flavor was good.
I didn't think they were tough. They didn't taste overcooked.
Okay, good.
But I would have pounded them thinner.
Yeah, they took forever to cook in the pan, way longer than the recipe said to. So, so that was one recipe I made. And then tonight, I had bought these black beans a while ago. I was going to make this Brazilian stew, and I still plan to. But I looked at it, and I'm like, oh, that's got a ton of ingredients, including pork shoulder, which we don't actually have on hand. So I said, what else can I do? So I'd had some chorizo in the fridge. So I decided to make black bean soup. And it's a quick black bean soup recipe. So it goes really quick if you have everything. But it calls for 4 cans of black beans. I only had 2, but I had the dried black beans. So I found a method to quick cook black beans in the Instant Pot. So you put the beans in the pot, you cover them with water by a few inches, and then you set it on manuals and you cook it on high for 20 minutes after it hits pressure, and then another 20 minutes afterward you just let the pressure naturally go down, and then you release the steam and then open it up. And perfect. The beans came out perfect.
I'm always nervous. Like, I always feel like it doesn't feel like that should be enough time, and I worry when I cook with the Instant Pot.
It's science. It's science. Pressure, heat. This was chemistry class. Yes.
Yeah.
I love cooking beans in the Instant Pot because it's so much faster. And they came out really good. And then the soup itself, what you do with it is you take 2 cans of the black beans, or 2 cups of the black beans, not 2 cans, but 2 cups, which is almost 2 cans. And you take that and a cup of chicken broth and you blend them in the blender. So you're kind of making a slurry. So you're kind of pre-making the thickener. And then you take a bunch of, like, this recipe only had onion and bell pepper as the vegetables, but we added carrots and celery as well.
That's not nearly enough.
Yeah.
Games.
So you take those and the chorizo sausage, you cook those in some oil for a while, you soften them up, you get a nice sofrito going, and then you add your garlic, oregano, cumin, and chili powder, and you let those kind of bloom for 30 seconds, and then you add in the rest of the broth. And so it called for 3 cups of chicken broth, and I looked at it, especially with the added vegetables, and I actually put more sausage than it called for. I thought, this is not nearly enough. So I added another 16 ounces of broth. because I'm glad I did, because we have leftovers, and I like having a little bit of leftovers. You just don't have a ton of leftovers. It would have been a close call, I think, if I hadn't added that. So it would have been really like very stuff heavy without enough broth, I think. So, and then you add some cilantro at the end in like 15 minutes. It cooks in 15 minutes. It was so fast. So it was really good. And then to go with it, you made some cornbread.
I said, cornbread would be good. I like black beans and cornbread.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided to try a new cornbread recipe this time. I usually make a very fluffy cake-like cornbread. Yes, cake-like cornbread.
Yes. Even though you're a Southerner, you make a sweet cornbread. We've talked about this before.
Right. Anyway, I found a recipe for a skillet cornbread, which, so you put your cast iron skillet in the oven with some a couple, like maybe 4 or 5 tablespoons of bacon fat in it. And you get that really hot, let the bacon fat melt.
I mean, everyone has bacon fat in the fridge, right?
Well, we do. And then you pour the batter into the hot skillet, and it makes a really nice crust because it's hot, that hot fat meeting the batter. I was a little bit concerned because we did not have a 12-inch skillet. We only had an 8-inch skillet.
I thought we had.
I thought we had one too. But
it might be in the camping gear.
I think it's probably in the camping
I'll have to
gear.
take a look at that.
Anyway, I was a little bit nervous that I did not want there to be too much batter and for it to make a mess inside my oven. I had that happen recently where something overflowed in the oven and it was awful. Oh, it was the cheesecake for Anthony's birthday.
We talked about that last week. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was a mess. So I instead got 2 skillet because we had a second.
We have a cast iron skillet, so it's more slope sided, which is about 10 inches. Right.
They're both skillets.
Well, one is a straight sided skillet and like a fry pan.
It's like said skillet. Like
okay,
it was not clear.
Yes, the terminology is somewhat flexible, but there's the straight sided skillet that is the normal cast iron skillet, and then this one is more of a fry pan where it's got the more sloped sides.
Right. Anyway, so that worked pretty well. They were both very thin cornbreads.
Yeah.
Like maybe an inch thick at most.
I feel like you could have put it all in one pan.
I probably could have put it all in one pan, but there's no way to measure it because like once you get the hot bacon in the pan, and you don't really want to put the wet stuff in the pan before you put the hot bacon in. So there was no way to
there's no way to
eyeball it.
Yeah.
And anyway, the flavor was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the crust that it made on it, and I definitely want to do that again.
Yes, I would do it again. And maybe we need to get a 12-inch.
We definitely need to get a 12-inch cast iron pan.
The thing I love about cast iron is it's so cheap. In fact, we could probably go to Tractor Supply and pick one up for cheap money.
We need to go there anyway to get boots.
Yes, and John O'Brien works there. He told me he'll give us the family discount.
Oh, that's nice. If he happens to be there when we go.
One of my scout dads works there. He said to let him know, so I'll let him know.
Okay.
All right, so that's what we've been cooking. So yum.
Yeah, I did a lot of baking this weekend.
I
made a honey whole wheat loaf on Saturday, and today I made granola and no-bake cookies and cornbread.
Yes, the chocolate peanut butter oatmeal no-bake cookies are a huge hit.
So good. I love them so much.
We are really living the Fat Tuesday lifestyle.
That was the thing, is I really wanted to have some like fat before Fat Tuesdays so that we could, because what I hate is I usually end up, for some reason, the week before Ash Wednesday, I end up with like almost no treats in the house, and it's just kind of, it feels like a very frugal week, and we end up doing lots of meatless meals, and then I'm like, wait, it doesn't feel like a change.
Right.
So I really wanted to get in something that felt not so Lenten this weekend before we have to go into Ash Wednesday. Yep. So I think
we had a roast yesterday. That was good. Maybe we should do something more meatish tomorrow too. Some meat dish.
I don't know. I always end up doing like, I'm really tired and I just need to make something quick, and I make like eggs on Monday. And I'm thinking,
or spaghetti.
Just something that's no meat, and then I'm thinking Ash Wednesday doesn't feel different.
Yeah. So this is good. So,
I like the Eastern custom. I have some friends who are Eastern Rite Catholics, and they do Lent really hardcore, where they give up like dairy and
yeah, they give up everything.
But they have like special weeks where like they have last Sunday was the last day that they had meat, and so they ate like big meat feast, and then this weekend was the last week when they ate dairy, and so today was Cheese Fair Sunday, which I love that Cheese Fair Sunday. They eat up all the dairy in the house, so you eat all your cheese. Now,
okay.
I don't really want to give up dairy for Lent.
It just sounds like the next day is a really bad day in your stomach. Sorry, but oh my gosh, I shouldn't eat all that cheese.
I like the name though.
Yes, I mean I love cheese, so I get it. Yeah, I mean, although it feels like then aren't you giving up meat for like more than 40 days?
Yes.
That's wow.
It's hardcore.
That is hardcore. Wow. Yeah. So we've already told the kids that we won't be buying chips and other treat like things, and we won't be baking things except for Sophie's birthday.
Right. Sophie was very, very concerned.
Yes.
Except my birthday, right?
Except your birthday. Although I think we still need to like go out for her birthday and have the cake. Well, you can have the cake on her birthday, I suppose. Her birthday is the 4th, which is a Friday.
The first Friday of Lent.
First Friday of Lent. So I think we can celebrate her birthday, but I think we need the dinner, the special dinner has to be a different day. I just don't, like, unless we're going for sushi, which would still seem to be in violation of the spirit of Lent. But yeah. Yeah.
We could go on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Thursday.
Right.
Something.
I call the Thursday of the first week of Lent, that's Meat Thursday, or the meat sandwich of, because you can't eat meat on Wednesday and you can't eat meat on Friday, but you can eat meat on Thursday. So that's Meat Thursday.
Uh-huh.
In any case.
Yeah, I know some people give up meat for all of Lent. And maybe someday when we don't have a lot of kids with weird needs in the house, that might be a possibility. But that's not happening right now.
Oh, when I'm old and I don't eat as much, like it seems like it's easier. Like old people like have like, oh, I had a bit of bread last week. I'm fine now. I haven't eaten since then. Like it just seems like your appetite kind of goes away, or that when I'm old and it's a lot easier then. I don't think I have it right, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so let's talk about what we've been watching, because we're still working on books that we haven't finished yet. But
gosh, yes.
This has been my worst start to a year for book reading yet. I keep adding books to my list. I'm not knocking them out. I gotta buckle down and just take some time, like a little bit time of every day, where I'm gonna just read. Just read for half an hour, not in bed, because what happens is I lie down in bed to read,
and then you start hitting me with your Kindle because you're falling asleep.
Exactly.
Whack.
Or just dropping my Kindle in the bed. Boom, boom. It takes 3 drops before I realize, okay, I'm not reading this. I'm sleeping while holding this. I'm putting this down and going to sleep.
Right.
All right. So, but what would I been watching? So I started watching this new series on Apple TV Plus called After Party. It's a comedy, and it's about a high school reunion, 15-year, I think, high school reunion.
Okay. Out
in California and Los Angeles, because of course that's where all important things happen if they're not in New York. And there's a murder at an after party after the reunion. One of their classmates becomes a pop star, a really obnoxious one.
Uh-huh.
And he dies, which is not a spoiler because this is the very first thing that happens in the first episode is he's dead. And it's a classic whodunit. You have all these people and any one of them could have done it and the detective has to find out. But what makes it interesting is each episode runs through each person's particular point of view.
Like so it retells the story of the night from a different point of view every time.
But it tells it in a particular like movie or TV style.
Oh,
Like a noir thing, or like a French drama or action movie or whatever it is.
okay.
So each one is a little bit different, and so the hope is that by the end, and there's this subplot of our main viewpoint character, the one we're supposed to sympathize with the most, is he's got this girl that he had a crush on in high school. Nothing ever happened, and now he kind of wants something to happen with her, and that's kind of it's kind of
the romance hook.
the romance hook. It's predictable. I have a guess at how that's going to end. But so far, I've watched a couple episodes, and it's been pretty funny. Nothing too off the, nothing offensive. Nothing offensive. And it's been funny. I mean, standard disclaimers apply. I have not watched the whole thing. If you get to episode 3 and then there's a weird, orgy or something, don't blame me. I haven't watched it. I'm not recommending. Just saying this is what I've watched.
Okay.
Another series that I've watched that started is called Severance. Ben Stiller is the director of it. He's not the writer, but he's been the director. And it's a sort of it's a dystopian story about corporate culture. It takes place in this company, Lumon. It sounds like Lumos, which is the Harry Potter spell. It's Lumon. And they've perfected this technology where it separates your personality and memories. So when the switch is flipped, you have one set of memories and experiences, and then the switch back, and then you have a second set. And what they've done to do for this is they've divided your work and personal life. So the people who work on this particular floor in this company, as soon as they arrive on the elevator, their memory is switched, and they don't remember anything about their lives outside of this floor of this building.
Okay, that's weird.
And vice versa. When they're outside, they don't remember anything about their lives inside.
I mean, I suppose that gives you like high corporate security.
Right, but you think about how this it's supposed to be about the corporate security, but think of how a company could abuse this. They could do anything to you in there. They could treat you in any way
because you wouldn't remember it.
Because you wouldn't remember it. You just get a paycheck. But it's also a bit of a commentary on corporate life, corporate culture. There is this. They don't literally split your brain, but they do have this. You're this work person. When you go to work, you're this person, and then there's your outside life, your personal life, and that needs to stay out there. And it divides you into two people.
Right.
And there's all this weird corporate culture stuff that they do, like, okay, it's time for the we're having a melon bar, and and here's your incentives. Your incentives, if you hit your incentives this week, we give you these company branded Chinese finger puzzles, like
right.
Like this weird stuff, and there's like weird HR stuff, and like this wellness. They send this one guy in one of the episodes to a wellness session because he's been having trouble at work, and this therapist who's to all appearances is being really nice to him, and he's like, oh, but she's like, don't talk. That's 10 points off. It's like, wait a minute, what? And now he's like, 10 points off of what? And if you continue to talk, you'll lose all your points and be suffer the consequences. And he's like, it's like, so now he's in wellness because of job stress and because of these rules, these arbitrary rules being imposed on him. And I start to wonder, like, is it going to be real that this is all just a big experiment? That they're experimenting on people to see how they react, how much they can take? Like, the job that they do is this weird sorting of numbers. Like, they have these old computer terminals, and these numbers are like in random patterns on the screen, and they need to sort them by feel. Like, any numbers that feel scary need to be dragged into the box.
You're a kid. Really?
Yes. It's really weird. And then we switch to the outside, and our main character, played by Adam Scott, who looks really weird these days. He used to be in Parks and Rec. He looks kind of gaunt and strange. He literally crosses a river to his house that like we see them go back and forth. It's like home and work are literally divided by a river, like the river Lethe, like the Greek river of forgetfulness. And all of the company, it's all like this weird 80s corporate look. This is how we show dystopian corporate culture in TV nowadays. Amazon had a series recently which was like that. It was really weird. He has a sister, this character, in Mark, and he goes to her house, and there's this bizarre dinner party. It was very funny. Like, oh, we don't, he's like talking to his sister. How is it a dinner party if there's no food? Oh, it's all conceptual. Like, they all have glasses of water, and that's it. And it's just a very bizarre dinner party. And he stays over at her house. They're having a baby, and he has to sleep in the kid's car bed. Like, they've already have a crib, a car bed, and a grown-up bed, because they read in a book that children should not experience the trauma of having a bed replaced. So you put all of their beds in the room at once, and it's very funny. That was kind of funny. And then I think I'm 2 or 3 episodes in, and at one of the episodes, in the first episode, you find out one of the workers has disappeared. Like, he no longer works here. No explanation. And as the Mark says at one point, he's like, I don't know if he quit, if he died, if he had an accident, if he got promoted. I don't like, it's this trauma. Like, you lose a person that you've known for years. And as far as Mark knows, Work Mark only exists in this world of this corporation. So to lose one of the 4 people he knows in this office that they work in is a major trauma. So outside Mark, they call themselves innies and outies. So outie Mark has this guy, Pete, show up at his house, his former coworker, who remembers. And so there's a whole... And
so he doesn't remember... Mark doesn't remember Pete, but Pete remembers Mark.
Right, and Pete is trying to tell Mark about what's going on. So there's a whole another thing that's going on with that, and Mark's on the run so that they don't catch him, because he doesn't want to get caught, because he's a threat.
Or Pete is. Pete
is. So I don't know. It's interesting so far. It's a little dry and dystopian. It's not my usual fare, but I'm willing to give it a little bit more time to see how it goes. I mean, it's not a straight up comedy. If anything, there's a little dark humor in it, but it's a very thin dark humor. But it's got a great cast. I mean, besides Adam Scott, it's got people who I know, and I will say in a second, because I didn't take the time to look it up ahead of time, but the cast includes, besides Adam Scott, the After Party. No, that's not it. I typed the wrong thing. Severance. And they call the process severance, and people have been severed.
Which is an interesting pun, because severance usually means like being fired from a job.
Exactly. So there's a new woman who's just started, so that's pretty interesting character. But you have John Turturro, who's in it, so he's good. Patricia Arquette, and Christopher Walken just showed up.
Oh man,
yeah,
that is quite a cast.
Yeah, and then there's other people that's gonna show up in other episodes too, like Mark Geller and a couple other names that I recognize. So it should be interesting to see as we go along. So that's called Severance. It's on Apple TV Plus. So we watched on Saturday, because we had a scout thing on Sunday, we watched Spider-Man Homecoming. This is the first Tom Holland Spider-Man movie in the MCU, and you'd never had a chance to see it when you did your first watch through of the MCU.
I missed the Spider-Man because I was only watching the Disney movies, and I didn't bother to go hunt down Spider-Man.
Well, yeah, I had to buy
it. Right. Like, I didn't bother to go find it.
For those who don't know, Spider-Man. Sony has the rights to make the Spider-Man movies, and so all the Spider-Man movies have been made as part of Sony. So your first watch through and with the kids, what did you think, and how do you think the kids liked it?
Okay, so on the whole, I like it. Tom Holland is fun, and I liked the story. I liked the hook that it's about the cleanup after the after the Battle of New York. And it's also sort of about Tom Holland's homecoming, coming back after Civil War, having been just like quickly drafted into fighting.
You're an Avenger. No, you're not.
You're fighting Captain America 1 minute, and then he's dumped back into his life with a "Don't call us, we'll call you" from Tony Stark. Now, this movie hinged on a device that I hate. I hate the miscommunication. Things go bad because people aren't talking to one another.
Right.
On the other hand, like I said, this happens right after Civil War. So Tony Stark is probably, he's kind of a jerk anyway, but he's not on his game. He's just been fighting with the other Avengers, and yeah, things are a mess. So one can understand on one level why he's not taking Tom Holland seriously, but he's totally irresponsible. Like, I'm going to pluck you out of your life, throw you into combat, and then put you back as if nothing happened and not communicate with you at all.
I was saying today that Homecoming, it's like a veteran homecoming. Like, Tom Holland went to war, Civil War, Captain America Civil War, and then came home and is having to deal with that. And
it's kind of it was a weird war too. Like, it was a very short fight. You couldn't have lasted, like, in real time very long.
An hour at most, maybe 20 minutes.
Right. So he's like dropped into battle with Captain America and like with his favorite like heroes, and then sent home. And he stumbles upon this like important crime thing, and he tries to tell Tony about it, and he's blown off.
Yeah.
Multiple times. And so he does stupid things, but he's a 15-year-old kid, A. B, he doesn't have any guidance or mentorship, which, Tony has responsibility to mentor him because Tony's the one who
got him started. Yeah.
Yes, he was doing some minor crime fighting on his own in New York, which is how he presumably got drafted by Tony in the first place. But seriously, I hate the device of people not talking to one another, people not contacting one another. Other than that, though, I did like I liked the movie.
Yeah.
I think the kids liked it pretty well.
One of the things I liked was the realness that it gives. Like you mentioned, in this real world, so you have this character, Adrian Toomes, played by Michael Keaton, who, cleaning up the Battle of New York, picks up Chitauri, weaponry and this alien tech, and begins to create stuff out of it that people want to buy, and illegal weapons, and he becomes a bad guy doing that.
Yeah, I liked the realness. It feels like a real world. Like, if you actually had a battle in New York, there would be people who are having to clean it up, and there would be real consequences, and this would affect real people's lives. And I like the fact that in the MCU, they don't just like blow up cities and then go on like reset the world as if nothing happened.
Right.
There's no reset in the MCU. Like, things really happened, and they really have real world consequences, big, important real world consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is a really interesting thing. And I thought that the characters were good. I like
Ned. Ned was good. He's
Peter's best friend.
Yeah.
Was fun. And
so Michelle, the strange girl, or what was it? MJ, as she will be known. MJ Parker was Peter Parker's. MJ, not Parker. MJ in the comic books was Peter Parker's girlfriend. So
I like the way they introduced her in this. She's sort of the girl who's following him around, who he doesn't really pay any attention to, but the reader, the viewer, can tell that she's totally got a crush on him,
even though she acts uninterested.
And she probably has figured out something about him, because she seems to be very in tune with what he's doing and maybe has some questions.
Right.
I would be surprised if she doesn't figure this out on her own without the whole need for Peter to break it to her, because she's savvy enough to put two and two together.
Right.
this movie had some really amazing storytelling moments that I loved. There were parts of it that were just really tight and just beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Keaton's great. He's such a good bad guy.
I'm Batman. I was waiting for him to say something like that. Well, there was a reveal at the end where, like, I remember the first time I watched it, and I was totally surprised. And you know me, I usually figure these things out ahead of time, but this reveal was a complete surprise and well done. And then watching the characters, this one character figure things out.
Oh, that was brilliant. Like that was one of the best scenes I've seen in a long time.
So as he's like, you can see it in his face as the pieces are falling into place over the course of a couple minutes, and everything changes. It was really well done and directed too, because like he's driving a car and they're sitting at a red light, and you can see the light on his face, reflected on his face, and then when the penny drops, the light turns green, and it was well done. I think it was Bella who noticed that the light.
Yeah, the light was good.
Yeah, that was. So, yeah, Homecoming is a good, and I think it's a good part of the MCU. I think it adds a lot.
I forgot, like, one of my favorite parts is that we show how Peter gets to the battle in Civil War. Like, he doesn't just show up.
Right.
And they do it through the great device of he's taking selfie videos.
Right. He's taking a video with his phone. And talking into the phone like a teenager would, who's excited about what's going on. And of course, we've all seen Civil War, so we know what goes on. We know the bigger story, but we're seeing it only from his
that little
his phone
slice
camera.
of what Peter's phone sees.
Yes, yeah, that was pretty good. With it, and Jon Favreau as Happy Hogan is just so great in this. He's so good. Oh man,
I mean, there is a lot of really good storytelling. Like the way they told the story was, I was impressed. Who was the director on this one?
The director is John Watts. I don't know him, but I don't know if he's what else he's done. He also is a screenwriter on it. Yeah, what else? He's doing Fantastic Four, which is interesting. He's also he directs all three of the Spider-Man movies.
Okay.
So the next one is called Far From Home. It's good. I don't think it's as good. And then No Way Home is the one that just came out, which I haven't seen yet, and people are losing their minds over. Like, people are saying this is one of the best MCU movies. So,
well, I mean, I have to say this one impressed me, so I'm looking forward to seeing the others when we get there.
Yes. So the next one up is going to be Thor Ragnarok. So looking forward to watching this with the kids. This is going to be so good. They're going to love it. So it's interesting. So Ragnarok, and then Black Panther, and then Avengers, Infinity War, which will be interesting. They're going to lose their minds. And then it's Captain Marvel, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and then Endgame.
That's a long... See, I watched Infinity War and Endgame back to back, and I watched Captain Marvel later.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it was a long time between them. I mean, we could fiddle with the order, but you can watch Marvel, Captain Marvel out of order, I guess.
Right.
Although she shows up in Endgame, and so that's you kind of want to know who she is.
I'm trying to remember what order. Like, I think I might have watched that before I watched Infinity War.
You could watch it before Infinity War. I mean, it takes place decades, when it takes place in the 90s, so you can watch it at any time. I
think that might almost work better that way. I think waiting several weeks between Endgame and Infinity War might be a little bit much.
I think we should watch, so after Black Panther, watch Captain Marvel, then Endgame, then Infinity War, then Ant-Man and the Wasp, then Endgame, because Ant-Man and the Wasp sets up Endgame. I mean,
I haven't seen it yet, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, then you don't understand why Ant-Man was where he was.
No, I did, actually. It was pretty clear from the way Ant-Man ended what was going to happen.
I guess. You got to see. You got to see it. Anyway, so that's what's coming up on those. So the last thing we want to talk about for things we watched was you want to talk about, we've started The Chosen season 2, which I hadn't seen. And we watched the first episode with Bella and Sophie. And
I loved this episode.
yes.
Okay, so my favorite passage in the Bible, perhaps, like hands down, is the beginning of the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That passage just totally melts me. And so the focus of this episode, the first episode of season 2, is John writing his gospel.
Well, the frame narrative is.
The frame narrative is.
Yeah.
But really it's the focus of the whole thing, because what you see is like
You see John getting
what
for from Jesus.
right. I mean, it's a very John centric episode.
I suppose. Yeah.
In many ways. I mean, of course, it doesn't only focus on John.
Yeah.
But and the way they did it, I loved it. It starts with John interviewing the other disciples.
Yeah, the apostles and Mary.
And it was really lovely. I mean, there's a little bit of a modern take. Like it's very much playing around with the mockumentary style of like people talking to the camera.
Yes.
Because John, they're talking to John and the camera is standing in for
It's
him.
a confessional style documentary.
Right. Which at first threw me, but then I kind of got into it. I mean, one thing that this series does is it does try to break down some of the distance between the 21st century viewer and the first century world.
Right. They're not necessarily trying to be as authentic to the first century as possible. And this is probably how Jesus interacted with the apostles. That's not what they're doing.
No, they're really, I think they're getting at something different, which is they're really trying to say being a Christian is about a relationship with Jesus. And how can we use the medium of television, a film, to help people to have that relationship with Jesus? Like
Or at least to know him in that way.
To know him as a person that one can get to know. And that's really the focus of the story, is Jesus is a person with whom you want to have a relationship.
Right.
And that's really the drive in the series. So historical accuracy, not so much. They do try for a level of historical accuracy, but when the story, the people take the precedence in the storytelling. Right.
There's plenty of times when the language used is modern. What was the phrase that somebody freaked out? Like, I think Peter says, "Oh, don't freak out." It's like, okay, that's not a.
There's an episode. There's a scene that kind of threw me out of the story where the apostles are voting. And I'm pretty sure that century people didn't sit around taking a vote.
Well, they voted on things. Remember, they voted on who the next disciple who would replace Judas.
They chose lots.
Right.
Which is very different. I mean, that's very much embedded in Jewish culture. Like, think about the festival of Purim. Choosing lots is not the same thing as.
I was more thrown
voting.
by the setting, trying to set Jesus's agenda.
Well, that too.
Which is something that is totally anachronistic.
Right. So there were some definite anachronistic moments that threw me out. But what I really, really loved was the way they set up. How does John get to writing that beginning? In the beginning was the Word. Like, there is a profound insight that John has into the internal life of the Trinity, of Jesus the Son, Jesus, this man with whom he's shared
meals with.
And
spend time on the road
with to realize that he is the Word who was with the Father before at the moment of creation. And the way they dramatized that it blew me away. It was so beautiful. I was bawling. I loved it. And I don't want to like give too much detail because I kind of want to not spoil it, because it was just
right.
But it was beautiful. And
I also loved the way that they told the story of the Good Samaritan inside out. from a whole different point of view.
Yes, that was amazing. They deconstructed the story of the Good Samaritan. They told it in a way that you completely didn't expect. I didn't see it coming, and it was brilliant.
Yeah, it was really awesome. And it really hit on several things, like how the apostles felt about the Samaritans, and how John and James got the names the Sons of Thunder.
Yes,
and
that was fun.
that was like just so many different things. It was really good. It was, yeah, it's a good episode, and you can see Jesus has changed a little bit from the first season. There's a little bit more fire in the belly for certain things.
I think as he becomes more comfortable in his relationship with them, like the first season is about the calling.
Yep.
About him finding them and beginning a relationship with them. This is sort of a deepening where I can see he now knows them and they know him to the point where he can kind of say, okay, you crossed a line here.
Yes.
And where he's trying to teach and form, like he is the master and he is setting lessons for his students.
Yep.
So yeah, it was good.
I'm looking forward to episode 2. I mean, this just keeps getting better every time, and I'm really pleased.
And I can forgive the anachronisms. Usually anachronisms drive me crazy, but the show is good enough that I can forgive them.
Well, it's funny. I resisted watching this for a long time because a lot of times people go, "Oh, there's this new Christian film that you've got to watch," and I kind of roll my eyes and I'm like, "Oh, I'm sure it's nice." But I watch this, and every single episode has something that pulls out the tears in me, that really hits me. I
have to say, it's about who recommended it to me. The people who are recommending it to me were the people who would generally not like a lot of Christian content,
I suppose.
So,
I mean, my brother recommended this to me a lot in the beginning, and sometimes he gets very enthusiastic about things. I'm like, okay. But on the other hand, he's done me right. Like, he was the one who got me onto Scott Hahn back in 1985 or 86 or whenever it was. And that's what ended up getting me to Steubenville and all the rest. So I have to give him some credit there. All right, let's move on to talking about our readings of the week and the homily. Really good week. So 8th Sunday in Ordinary Time. And the readings this week were, the first reading was from Sirach. I love Sirach. Sirach's always good for some good aphorisms, some good advice. We had the second reading from 1 Corinthians, and then the Gospel from Luke. And it was all of them had at least one line about good fruit from the tree. Good fruit from a good tree.
Yeah, Sirach totally called me on the carpet, I have to say.
The first line.
When a sieve is shaken, the husks appear. So do one's faults when one speaks.
Our words are sifted. Like that.
Yeah, ouch.
Yeah. Well, welcome to social media. When the sieve is shaken, the husks appear. So do one's faults when one speaks. So maybe weigh your words first. Maybe you should sift your words before speaking more often. Not you specifically.
Yeah, me specifically.
Well, I'm saying Sirach is saying this.
It felt personal. I felt like
shots fired. Yeah. Emotional damage. Uncle Roger. It's a meme on online. Okay. So it's and then I like the next line was, as the test of what the potter molds is in the furnace, so in tribulation is the test of the just. And the idea of when the potter makes something out of clay, he doesn't know whether it will survive.
I took a ceramics class.
Well, there you go.
In college. And yeah, when you open up the kiln after firing, you're like, okay, how many pieces survive?
Right. Some pieces don't make it.
Some things go boom.
Yes.
And sometimes the ones that go boom
take the other ones with
take out some other ones. Like there's collateral damage. So yeah, there's that testing by fire. Like you don't know until you actually throw it in the oven if it's gonna survive.
Right. And sometimes tribulation is the test of the just. Well, how strongly have you built your foundation on Christ? Are you tethered to him solidly? Are you there with him? That's really the test. I mean, this is one of the reasons that tribulation is necessary for us in this world, God doesn't send suffering, but sometimes we need it in order to make sure that we're solid. If you build a house solidly on your foundation, you'll need a storm to show that it's solid. And then the rest of it's the fruit of a tree shows the care it has had. So too does one's speech disclose the bent of one's mind.
Yeah, there's another one about like watching what you say.
Right? Praise no one before he speaks, for it is then that people are tested. These are like fortune cookies.
Well, yeah, I mean, the wisdom books can be a little bit fortune cookie-ish, but
it's good. Praise no one before he speaks, for it is then that people are tested. Like, don't praise a guy before you know what he's gonna say. Mm-hmm. Let's hear him out first. So yeah, I love the Sirach readings that we get. And then 1 Corinthians 15:55, where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? Paul is talking about how, Christ, when Christ came, he defeated death. Death has no power over us anymore. Death, I mean, our bodies will die, but life is eternal. There is eternal life in heaven that has been promised to us. The sting of death is sin. The power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. I mean, man, isn't that awesome? Death has no victory. Christ died, Christ rose, and he showed the way. So those two, especially this past week, have really, and as you go into Lent, as you go heading into Ash Wednesday, it's the perfect set of readings. And then we come to the gospel where Jesus talks about
this almost feels like a wisdom book from Jesus. Like there's a lot of rapid fire aphorisms here.
Right.
It's not like a story. It's like boom, 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 a bunch of different little mini lessons from Jesus.
Well, it's the splinter in the eye, which we're all familiar with. Did you not notice the splinter in your brother's eye? Why do you notice the splinter in your brother's eye? When you have a wooden beam coming out of yours, like not just like another sliver, not a splinter in your own eye, like you've got this beam coming out of your eye, and then
and the blind leading the blind.
The blind leading the blind. And a good tree does not bear rotten fruit, nor does a rotten tree bear good fruit. For every tree is known by its fruit. People do not pick figs from thorn bushes, nor do they gather grapes from brambles.
Okay, I absolutely just love I can kind of see him like staring at the guy who's got the basket of grapes, and he's like, "You didn't get off, you didn't get that out of brambles, did you?"
Right, exactly. So I really like that. And so Father Matt, our pastor.
Okay, but there was another.
What was the other aphorism you wanted? A good person out of the store of goodness in his heart produces good. But an evil person out of a store of evil produces evil, for from the fullness of the heart, the mouth speaks. Okay,
there's another one. Like the whole, like, you know somebody by what they say.
Yes, right.
Just like Sirach, you got to watch your words, because that's really the true test of your character.
Of course, it starts with the blind leading the blind. Can a blind person guide a blind person? Because they'll both fall in a pit. Which, well, okay. So Father Matt had a really good homily today. And had some really good things. He was talking about how, the blind leading the blind, or we're called to evangelize and to be the good fruit, to bear good fruit, and that good fruit is to evangelize, to bring Christ to others, to bring others to Christ. And he says no one ever became a Christian because he lost an argument, which I think there's a lot of people I run into online who need to remember this.
They think that it's all about winning the argument.
Right. If I can just beat you into verbal submission, you will be convinced of the rightness of Christianity. So Father said, we become a Christian because we are introduced to Jesus by someone who loves him and who loves us.
That second part, I think, is one of the things that we often forget. Like, I love Jesus, and therefore I'm going to go convert the whole world. But you have to love not only Jesus,
but the person
like it. You are a bridge of love. You love Jesus. You love this other person, and you want to introduce the person that you love to the other person that you love.
Right.
It's really about making an introduction. Like, I love you. I love you. Now
you will love each other.
Right.
Right. And then, the father also said, it's one man, starving man, showing the other starving man where the food is. Like, I'm no better than you are. I'm not fundamentally a better person than someone who doesn't know Christ. I just know where the food is. I just, like, you're looking for something. I know you're looking for something to sustain your life. Me too. Let me show you.
I found a good spot.
Right. I found the store of it. Let's go get some together.
Or I really liked the other story he told where he talked about the pit.
The man fell in the pit.
So a guy falls into a pit. A guy comes along and tries to rescue him, but his ladder is too short. And then another guy comes and tries to rescue him with some rope, and his rope is too short. And then a third guy comes and tries to rescue him. No, the third guy comes and jumps into the pit with him. And he's like, "What are you doing? Now there's two of us in the pit." And he's like, "Yeah, but I've been down here before. I know how to get out. Let me show you."
Right.
We are all in the same pit.
Or we've been in the pit.
Right. We're no better than the guy who's in the pit. And in fact, I really love that image of jumping in the pit with, like, to really love someone, you have to be not standing up at the top, but down there with them.
Here, come up here with me. No, let me come down there with you. Jesus went and dined with the sinners. Why are you dining with those, having meals with the sinners? Why are you spending so much time with these sinners? Well, the patients need the doctor. Like, the doctor goes to the patient. It goes to take care of them. Like, that's where my work is. They're the ones who need me.
But also, I think, Jesus, he gets down literally into the tomb. Like, he doesn't just, like, pull us up out of the tomb, out of death. He gets down in there with us.
He descends into the dead.
He dies. He is buried. Like, we cannot get any lower down than that. Like, as low as we could possibly sink, he's there with us. Mm-hmm. He climbs down into the pit with us. And I think that we need to do that for each other too. We can't just sit up at the top, lowering down ropes as if we were somehow better than the people who are in the pit.
Yeah. So the other thing Father Matt talked about was how we have to prepare ourselves to be able to evangelize, to be equipped, to be in relationship.
I like the practical. Yeah. He really got into the practical nitty gritty too.
And he said that he advises a day, week, month, year plan. Daily prayer, weekly mass, monthly confession, and every year read a book that helps you grow in faith. He says that's not a plan to become a saint. This is like the minimum. This is just to be a disciple.
Well, specifically, he said he referenced the parable about the plank and the splinter, and he said this is the plan to get the plank out of your eye.
Right.
Like, if you want to not have a plank in your eye, pray every day, go to mass every week, go to confession once a month, and read a book about the faith that will draw you closer to Christ at least once a year. That's the plank removal prescription.
So, very good. And I think that about does it for this week. We should wrap up. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Angie T, John H, Mark S, Thomas D, and John B. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So, if you want to find any links from our discussion, they'll be in our show notes at sqpn.com/bets. Send us your feedback at the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to bets, that's BETTS, at sqpn.com. And until next time, I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.